A couple of years after I had graduated from college, I finally was making enough money to move out. Rent was pretty high where I lived, and I didn't want a roommate, so I had to search pretty hard to find a one-bedroom apartment that was in my budget. I finally settled for a unit that wasn't in the best area of town, but decently priced. Most importantly, they were dog-friendly, which meant I could bring my beloved dog Henry along with me. On move-in day, I met the girl that was in the unit right next to mine. Her name was Rachel. She was nice and around my age. She was also living alone, so we agreed to have each other's backs in the future if anything happened. She encouraged me to sign up for an account on an app called Nextdoor. It was a way to communicate with people in the nearby area. People would post about missing pets, road construction, any criminal activity that had been going on, and you could post items for sale. Because I wanted to be sure to keep up with anything affecting my apartment complex and the surrounding area, I quickly set up an account. I was so busy with moving, I didn't look at it for a few days. After I had gotten moved in, I realized that the couch I had brought with me didn't fit very well within the living room because it was too big. I was in search for another one, but I was on a budget, so I knew buying a new one wasn't going to be an option. I then remembered the girl next door telling me a lot of people sold things on Nextdoor. I opened up the app and made a quick post saying that if anyone in the nearby area had a couch they were looking to get rid of, I might be interested. A few people replied, but their asking prices were all too high. The next day, a guy named Joe commented on my post saying that he had a couch he was looking to sell, and he was only asking for $100. This I could definitely swing. He asked for my phone number and said he would text me pictures of the couch. Not thinking much of it at the time, I agreed and sent my number to him. The next day, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered it, and it was Joe from Nextdoor. He asked me how I was liking the apartment complex so far and if I had any problems while moving in. I briefly told him that everything was fine so far, and then asked him if he would send over the pictures of the couch. He pretty much ignored my request and then went on and on about his own life, his wife, and how long he had been living in the apartment complex. He then mentioned that his wife probably wouldn't like the fact that he was talking to me. I was confused because the whole nature of the call was to discuss buying the couch. I told him I had to go, but if he could send over the pictures of the couch, that would be great. I then abruptly ended the phone call. The guy seemed strange for sure, but I wondered if he was just lonely or something. Several hours passed by and he still didn't send any pictures of the couch. At this point, I was starting to wonder if he had a couch to sell at all. But then at around 10 that night, he called me again. I was annoyed that he was calling me so late, but I picked up anyway. The man told me that he had been thinking about me all day and asked if I was single. I was completely thrown off since he previously mentioned having a wife. Angry now, I asked him if he even had a couch he was looking to sell. When he didn't answer, I hung up the phone and blocked his number. What a freak, I thought to myself. The next day, I saw that I had a Facebook notification. It was a friend request from Joe. I was surprised by the effort he was going to in order to keep talking to me. I took a look at his profile and was promptly creeped out. He was very scary looking with long, ratty hair and dead-looking eyes. I began scrolling down his page and saw that he had posted photos of pen and ink drawings. Each one was more terrifying than the next. They were incredibly violent images of people with severed heads, animals with human-like faces, and demonic-looking creatures with no eyes and rows of sharp teeth. This guy was clearly deranged. I blocked his account, hoping to never hear from him again. The next morning, I walked out to my car to go to work and I noticed something pinned to my windshield. I reached for it and gasped at what I saw. It was a drawing of a girl with long dark hair. There was a rose tattoo on her left shoulder. I immediately knew the drawing was of me. This was not the worst part. The girl was lying on a table, chained at her wrists and her ankles. There was a man standing over her, pressing a knife into her chest, and there was a pool of blood on the floor. There was nothing written on the paper, but I knew it was from Joe. The drawing style matched those pictures on his Facebook page. I was completely confused. This was a massive apartment complex, and I was guessing 1,000 or more people lived here. How did Joe possibly figure out my complex number? I stuffed the picture in my purse and refused to think about it anymore. I wasn't going to let him intimidate me or ruin the experience of living on my own for the first time. That day when I got home from work, I knocked on Rachel's door. When she answered, I told her all about my creepy next door experience and showed her the terrifying drawing. She was completely creeped out and told me that she would keep an eye out for Joe, and if she saw him, she would text me to warn me. I thanked her and headed home. That night, I was extra careful to check all the locks on the doors and windows in my apartment before going to bed. Have you ever had the feeling that someone is watching you? Well, I experienced it on that night, even in my sleep. It was enough to startle me awake. When I opened my eyes, I was shocked to see Joe standing before me, watching me sleep. I screamed at the top of my lungs and reached over to my bedside table to turn on the light, knocking the lamp over in the process and sending it crashing to the floor. Joe lunged at me, threw me over his shoulder, and took me into the dining room where he laid me on the table. I was screaming as loud as I could and struggling against him. I was short and only 110 pounds. I was no match for him. My dog was barking like crazy trying to attack Joe, and Joe pushed him into another room and closed the door. He held a knife to my neck and told me that if I kept moving, he would use it on me. I couldn't keep still, and he cut a thin line into my jaw, causing me to howl out in pain. He used a thick rope to tie my ankles and wrists together. I was wearing just an oversized t-shirt at the time and felt more vulnerable than ever. I didn't know what he was going to do to me. When he had finished tying me down, he opened a suitcase on the floor. The suitcase contained some of the scariest weapons I could imagine. There were whips, hatchets, sharp scissors, and more knives of different sizes. He looked at me lying on the table helplessly and smiled a cruel and terrifying smile. He said, "This is going to be fun." "Why are you doing this to me?" I asked him. "I don't take rejection well," he responded with a laugh. He grabbed a larger knife and stroked my thigh with his hand. "A blank canvas," he said in a hushed voice. "I think I'll sign my name." I began screaming again in agony as he dug the knife into my flesh. I was sure I was going to die here. After he had finished, he pulled out what looked like surgical instruments. "What pretty eyes," he told me. "I think I'll take one." I scrunched my eyes shut, preparing for the worst, and then all of a sudden, I heard a bang. I opened my eyes and I saw Rachel standing in front of me with a baseball bat. Joe was on the floor, bleeding from his head. "I heard your screams. Thankfully, that piece of trash left the door unlocked," she told me. She picked up one of the knives from the suitcase and slashed the ropes until I was free. She helped me off the table and said, "We need to get to my apartment now. He could wake up at any time." She helped me into her apartment and locked the door behind her. Then she called 911 and handed the phone to me. While I talked to the dispatcher, Rachel pulled every piece of heavy furniture she could find to the door, blocking it. She said that this apartment complex had weak locks that could easily be broken. When the police arrived, we made our way outside and I was placed on a stretcher and taken into an ambulance. When I got to the hospital, I quickly fell unconscious due to the stress and blood loss. When I awoke, Rachel and my family members were by my side to comfort me. Rachel told me that I had lost a lot of blood and had a lot of bandages on, but I was going to make a full recovery. My parents told me that they had spoken to the police and Joe had been taken into custody. They said that they thought he had been planning this attack for a long time, and I just so happened to be the victim he chose. When I was dispatched from the hospital, I had the apartment maintenance staff replace my lock with a modern, powerful one. I then made several purchases, including mace, a taser, and a baseball bat. I'll never let myself be in a situation where I am defenseless again.